Well, good day and welcome to you to September the 19th. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to this channel, Search for Signs, and welcome you back if you have been here before. And as always, I want to encourage everyone to look in the description portion of these videos because there are links galore in there that take you to websites that I think give you really good background information about what we talk about. So they're there for you if you want. All right. Now, I want to thank those people who joined the discussion since the last video I put up by posting comments or asking questions in the case of a few of them. Smoke Doja, Vanessa Rivera, Mike's Music Den, Rick M, and Spirit Watcher 178. Thank you for taking time out of your day to comment. And of course, I encourage everybody to join the discussion however you want to do that, posting comments, asking questions. You can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com if you want, and, do it that way if you however you want to do it, or not. If you just want to listen to these videos and not comment or ask a question, that's fine too. So, all right. Now, I also talked to somebody on the phone yesterday who is a listener of this channel, and I had a wonderful conversation with him, but he asked a question that I thought was good enough for me to try to discuss in this video. So, Mark, if you're listening, hopefully you don't mind me asking a question on your behalf. I don't think you'll mind it based on kind of the person I picked up that you are on the phone. I don't think you really mind because it wasn't a personal question or anything. So, anywho, let's get on into it. Rick M, I think, would be the easiest one to start off with because it's going to be the easiest one for me to answer. Hi, Gary. If you don't mind expounding a tad bit more regarding your statement that, quote, humanity was used equally by both, unquote, the Masters of Wisdom and the Lords of Materiality, about approximately 12-minute mark. Please, if you will, explain used. Yeah, I can explain it really well and very easily. I misspoke. And it's not the first time I've misspoke on this channel, and I'm certain that it's not going to be the last. I meant to say humanity was influenced equally by both the Masters of Wisdom and the Lords of Materiality. So any confusion that I have caused, I do apologize by using the wrong word. All right, now, but real quick, what he was talking about was, according to the Masters, there was a great civilization that lasted for millions of years and ended about 100,000 years ago, known as Atlantis. Now, most people have heard about it in some way, shape, or form, either as myths or in movies or whatever, but that continent did exist according to these masters, and it was a tremendous civilization. And toward the tail end of it, there was a great war between the forces of light and the humanity that was kind of aligning themselves with that group, and the opposite, the Lords of Materiality, the forces of darkness, and their group. And it caused the destruction of Atlantis, depicted in the Bible as the flood that Noah was predicting was going to happen. Anywho, and ever since then, the Masters of Wisdom and even the Lords of Materiality retreated away from their direct influence on humanity and worked indirectly through the disciples in the world. And the information about these masters, the truth about these masters, has long been forgotten. Now, it's been coming out more and more, and it started with Helena Blavatsky a little over 100 years ago, and then Alice Bailey, Helena Roerich talked more about the masters and their plans and how they're coming back into the world, and then Benjamin Creme in the 70s announced that they were coming back, and they actually had already started to come back. So that's kind of where it fits in. But most people don't know anything about it, and those people who do know about it don't know much about what they talked about, or even believe that there's any truth to it. So that's kind of where we're at. But these masters knew at some point they would come back into the world, known for who they were at some point. It was hoped, up until recently, really, that it would be another 1,000 years before they would be able to come back. But Maitreya made the announcement in the late 40s, or the mid-40s, 1945 actually, June of 1945 to be exact, that he would have to come back along with these masters far sooner than expected. And it was July 19th, 1977, when he left his ancient retreat and entered London. And since then has been working behind the scenes to create the climate of expectancy, of hope, but also of the climate to bring about peace and to end, war in that way, to bring about justice, to end hunger in that way. But about 10 or 12 years ago, actually, it's 12 years ago now, the master of all the masters, Maitreya, has actually started to speak on TV. And that's kind of where we're at this moment in time. But their influence on humanity will be direct now. And into the future, they'll be teaching humanity directly in whatever area they're in, whether it's politics, government, arts, science and healing, and medicine and that kind of thing, to spiritual teachings and so forth. And so the advancement of humanity will be so quick that I don't think we really can compare it to even how fast things are moving today in terms of the consciousness of humanity. We'll be able to see these masters, emulate these masters, be able to experience their joy and their love and their wisdom in a way that we couldn't by just reading the Bible or just reading books by Benjamin Creme even, or Alice Bailey books. We'll be seeing it firsthand in our lives, being touched by them in that way. And so it's quite an unprecedented and extraordinary time that very, very, very few people even know is even going on right now. But anywho, that's why we talk about what we talk about here. But thank you for bringing it to my attention. And like I said, just be prepared for me misspeaking in the future, because it happens all the time. All right. Alrighty. Let's see. I'll read an email actually coming from Spirit Watcher 178. So that'll be the next thing I'll talk about. If you're listening to this, Mr. Spirit Watcher 178, you sent me several emails and I read them, and I don't know if you were wanting me to comment on them or what, but it read more like you were just trying to share your thoughts with me. So thank you for those emails. But if there was a question in there that I missed, or you wanted me to talk about something in particular, please re-email some of those to me and I'll take a look at it again and we'll talk about it. But in your last email, you actually did ask me a question. So let's talk about it, because I think I tried to answer it before, and maybe I didn't do a good enough job at answering it or whatever. But anyway, it says, when it comes to Maitreya and Jesus, why is there a Luciferian initiation oath that's required to be taken by David Spangler of Share International? It's like, what are you talking about? So anyway, we'll talk about that in a second too. From what you've said, Maitreya and Jesus don't want people to follow or worship them. So having this Luciferian oath as a requirement is completely contrary from what you have said. By the way, I've been sharing our question and answer sessions in my private group, and so people in my group throughout this world, especially in Israel, are very interested. Well, thank you for that. I'm not kidding. You're such a blessing answering my questions. You're a person that has my respect. Well, you have my respect as well, and love as well. So thank you very much for that. A point of fact, David Spangler had nothing to do with Share International. In fact, I don't think David Spangler was even alive when Share International came into being. Benjamin Creme was the driving force for Share International. So if you didn't know that, that's who that was. In terms of the books by David Spangler, I already know what most people are going to think about if you're listening to this far. What are you talking about? A Luciferian initiation, an oath? Is that an oath to Satan that they're expecting us to take? No, that's not what he meant. I don't know much about David Spangler, but I know that's not what he meant. I thought I'd answered it before, but we'll try to rehash it again, and maybe we'll get a better response, and I'll answer it a little bit better, I guess. But Lucifer, according to the esoteric view, does not mean Satan. It means bringer of light. Now, I am keenly aware of the fact that the vast majority of people, when hearing the word Lucifer, automatically think of Satan. So I don't like talking about it in that way. I would use a different word to talk about what I would mean, but he wrote about it at a time when maybe perhaps it wasn't used in that way, or wasn't quite as a popular view as it is today in terms of what people think Lucifer means. But I know that's not what he meant. He was talking about an initiation that would infer more light on the individual. And in the coming time, millions upon millions of people will be taking these initiations, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But it's not an oath to Maitreya, it's not an oath to Satan, it's not an oath to Jesus even. It's just, there is an oath it's conferred upon the person who's taking the initiation, but it's not what you may think. Now, initiation just means an expansion of consciousness. So it's an important topic, but to be honest with you, it's kind of a waste of time to talk about at this time, because there's other things that we should be talking about, like the problems of the world and what we can do to solve them and so forth. But in time, there will be masters who will be educating and training people to take initiations. Right now, they're doing it on the inner plane. Eventually be done on the outer physical plane, but that's a long time to come. That's what I'm saying. It's really not that important. But To reiterate it again, so there's no miscommunication on my end, it's not an oath to Maitreya. Okay, it's not an oath to what people would be thinking is to be Satan. It's something totally different than that. Now, if you read the Bible, just to kind of discuss it in biblical terms, to maybe help people to somewhat kind of relate to it, I guess. When Jesus was talking about the parable of the prodigal son, he was not, I think, talking about that story in reference to a sinner who sins against God, realizes he sins against God, asks for forgiveness, and is immediately forgiven. I don't think that's what he meant. I think he was discussing and talking in some very symbolic way about the path of return that we are all taking to becoming a master or becoming fully divine, which is our potential. Because within us is the same divinity all throughout cosmos. It's just the level of which we're manifesting it. So that would, what Maitreya would say, would be the difference between the masters and average humanity. So they're not better than us. They don't deserve our worship. They don't deserve even our devotion. We all share the same divinity. It's just they're manifesting it longer and perhaps better than we are. But they're the examples. They're the guarantee that we will eventually manifest it like them. But at this moment in time, we're not. Now, so that's one example in the Bible that I think he was talking about the path of return back to us becoming a master. There was also other things written in the Bible too that were symbols and hints about the initiations. There were according to the masters, there's 5 initiations that a person will take to become a master. And in each instance, up until I'd say probably several hundred years from now, they're all taken on the inner planes. And most people who have taken initiation are totally unaware of the fact that they even did take an initiation. So it's not anything that's done in secret in a building somewhere. It's done on the inner planes and, like I said, totally forgotten about by the person. Now, there is an oath that they have to take, but it's an oath of secrecy. So when they realize that they are of a certain point of evolution, and if they could remember the ceremony, they're not supposed to talk about it, because if they do talk about it, it could be very dangerous to the person that they're telling it to. So as a form of being harmless toward them, they were supposed to take an oath of secrecy, because upon each level of the initiations that a person will take, more and more power is conferred upon that person. So it would be dangerous for an average person to kind of know how to deal with life as a 4th degree initiate would be. So they don't talk about it. Now, that might not make a lot of sense to you the way that I explained it, because I don't know much about it either. I'm just referring to what I've read. Okay. Now, the other thing is, in the Bible, those 5 initiations were symbolized by certain things that Jesus did in his life: the birth, the baptism, the transfiguration, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. According to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, were symbols that were put in there in that way, and the timing were written in that way to symbolize those 5 great expansions of consciousness that we will all eventually take to become a master. The first initiation, or the birth, happens after several eons upon eons of time, but after several lifetimes, where a person starts to become very interested in meditation, very interested in health and fitness. They become a strict vegan, perhaps, because that first initiation is has to do with the physical body. So you have to have a strong, coordinated physical body in order to take that initiation, or you wouldn't be able to survive that initiation at all. So people were very interested in health and fitness to the extreme. They're very dogmatic about it. They're very dogmatic and, very pointed about their veganism and so forth. Beat each other, somebody else over the head about eating meat, and perhaps could be someone who's very close to taking the first initiation and in their own way, unconscious way, or preparing for that. Now, someone who has taken the first initiation has a larger extent control over their physical desires, those kind of things. They look the same as a regular person, but they're starting to confer more spiritual light than a person who hasn't taken the first initiation. But people who have taken the first initiation according to Ben's master, would be somebody who is starting to exhibit kind of a desire to serve, would be the beginning stages of that. But more as time goes on, more and more lifetimes go on, they become better at serving. They probably might even have some influential lives, but they might not. They might be just ordinary people, right? But the average world leader, according to Ben's master, is somewhere between the first and second initiation. That's presidents around the world, monarchs, prime ministers, businessmen of some note, scientists, artists of some note, perhaps, that we would look to as a kind of a world leader in whatever field they're in, perhaps has taken the first initiation and working toward taking the second. Not a perfected member of humanity by any stretch. And most of them don't know anything about any of this. They're totally unaware of it. But some of them can be very selfish people and very doing a lot of harm out there. But for the most part, it's a part of the path that they're taking in order to become a master at some point. But then the next symbol that was written in the Bible that talks about the next initiation was the baptism. And this initiation, according to the masters, is where the person really learns to start to control their desire and emotional nature, which is very difficult because during the time of Atlantis, the majority of the time was built upon learning how to use the emotions in that way and the desires in that way, to the point where it's really the dominating force of humanity at this time. So all the illusions, all the glamour, all the problems that we're facing today in our own lives individually and worldwide are based on the fact that the vast, vast majority of people are totally dominated by their emotions. They think their emotions are real, but the masters would say are nothing but illusion. And so that's the next phase. So if somebody who's taken the second initiation would not be swept up by their desire nature, by their emotions, the way that somebody who hadn't taken that initiation yet has. So people who, throughout history, who have taken the second initiation, there's a few that we can talk about, but off the top of my head would be somebody like Martin Luther King, Picasso, Gandhi, Madame Curie, Einstein, John F. Kennedy. Very much influential in their own right in whatever area they're working in, but yet not a perfected master in any way, shape, or form. Some of them were very destructive. Hitler had taken the second initiation. Seems kind of contrary to the point, but he had, and he was a deeply evil personality, but had taken that initiation. That's why he had so much power and influence over people that he had. And so if you look at those people throughout history, you can kind of, that person might have taken the second initiation or had already taken the first and so forth. But from the point of view, of the masters, they're still babies. So there's a saying in the Bible, out of the mouths of babes will come the truth, which has been misinterpreted by Christians to mean that at some point, babies would start speaking in their crib, speaking the truth. But it's actually the babes in Christ. People like Martin Luther King, who was tremendously influential of their time, from the master's point of view, is just a baby at doing all this. So quite a different frame of reference for sure. And then the transfiguration in the Bible is when Jesus took was it Peter, James, and John up to the mountain, and they had the vision with Moses and so forth, and I guess there were some other visions that happened. And that's the third initiation that esoterically would mean that the person is starting to control their mental vehicle. And people who are on that level are tremendously influential in whatever they're doing. Now, they're not perfect either. They still have a lot of issues and problems in their life. But those problems and issues that they have can be very destructive upon humanity if they're not careful. But people like Paul, the Apostle Paul, the disciples John, Peter, let's see who else, Rembrandt, Mozart, Beethoven, Abraham Lincoln, Mao Zedong. Trying to think if there's anybody. Winston Churchill took the third initiation. So it kind of gives you an example of people who were very influential, very powerful at that time, did a tremendous amount of good or destruction depending upon who the person was. But they are 3/5 of the way of becoming a master. And then the next symbol in the Bible is that of the crucifixion. where Jesus dramatically symbolized what a disciple will have to do in order to take that initiation. So it must be a very painful initiation to take, because thus he was suffering on the cross in that way. In the East, they call it the Great Renunciation. But a disciple, according to what he was talking about, the fourth initiation, they have to renounce everything in life, even up to life itself, whatever that means. So, but very, very few people at this time have taken the fourth initiation, and far fewer than who actually think they're fourth degree initiates have taken the fourth initiation. But people like Krishnamurti, Helena Blavatsky, Leonardo da Vinci, and Jesus actually was a fourth degree initiate when he was in Palestine. Very, very advanced. You can't compare really the consciousness of somebody like Leonardo da Vinci or Jesus to average man. They're so close to being a master at that point, but yet not quite a master. And then the fifth one, where a person becomes occultly saved, is when they take the fifth initiation, or the resurrection, as it was written in the Bible. So those are the 5 initiations that they're talking about. Now again, it's not an oath to Maitreya. So Maitreya would tell you not to follow him, not to worship him. But these initiations have nothing to do with that. So even when Jesus said, it was actually Maitreya speaking through Jesus at the time, but when Jesus said, I and the Father are one and the same, no one make it to the Father but through me, he was not talking about giving devotion to him. But the first 2 initiations, Maitreya is present at that initiation on the inner planes for the disciple. And then after that, it's somebody else that's in charge of that initiation with the person. So you really can't get to the first, or you can't get to the first or second initiation without Maitreya giving the initiation, but you're not giving an oath to him. Again, it's on the inner planes. Most people don't even remember this happening. So, but Maitreya would tell you, don't follow him, don't worship him. You know, if you're going to be devoted to anything, be devoted to saving the world in some way and helping to save the world in some way, whether that's helping to bring about peace, helping to save the environment, helping to end hunger, whatever it happens to be. But don't give him your devotion. No. So I don't see why there's really no conflict in my mind between talking about the initiations and the truth about the initiations and not following Maitreya. But anyway, hopefully that answers that question. Alrighty, and then Smoke Doja asked the question again, why does Maitreya hide in the shadows? Well, of course, he's not hiding in the shadows. I thought I'd answered this before too, so I'll try to answer it again, maybe a little bit better for you. Maitreya is speaking on TV, but he's not claiming to be Maitreya. And he's only doing this for a time. Eventually, we will all know at the same time that that person is Maitreya. But up until that point, we will either not know at all, or we won't really know for sure, because he won't say he's Maitreya, even when asked. Now, the reason why he's doing this is so that whoever is hearing him speak on TV, they can actually feel free to say yay or nay, and not say yay because they think he's a teacher, or think he's an avatar, or think he's the Lord of Love, or think he's the Christ come back, or the Imam Mahdi. But they can truly just be honest and go, yeah, I agree with that. I think we should do this. Or, no, I don't think we should do this at all. This has not, I don't think this is good at all. And feel free to be able to do both. But if he came out and claimed to be Maitreya, there would be a tremendous amount of interest in who he is, just being the personality of Maitreya. But it wouldn't do any good, because there would be a lot of people that would follow him just based off of that. And there's no long-term benefit to the world or to the individual for them to do that way. It's far better for them to be able to honestly say to themselves, yes, I want peace. Now what? Or, yes, I think it's a crime that we're living in a world where people are literally starving to death for no reason. Now, you use the word blasphemy. I know you weren't saying it's about me per se, but people say this about me all the time. Maitreya would say the only real blasphemy is allowing that crime to exist. We're all one family. We should all be taking care of each other, but yet we allow our members of our family to literally starve to death in a world of plenty. It's just a lack of will. That's the blasphemy. But when he's speaking to humanity, he's speaking heart to heart, of course, but yet and eventually it will wake up the hearts of the majority of people. And then the long term, it will eventually wake up the hearts of everyone. But initially, not everyone will agree with what he has to say. Some people will be totally against what he has to say, but they have to be able to and be free to be able to do both. And that's why he's saying it in the way that he's saying it, but not hiding in the shadows. Now, if you think that's what you think, that's fine. I have no quarrel with what you believe. And, I'm just presenting this for you to look at and for you to consider. But you said you've studied this information for 30 years. I've studied this information for quite a bit amount of time too. Not 30 years, but pretty darn close. And I've come to a different conclusion about this information than you have, right? Wouldn't you say? But if, we should all be left to be honest with ourselves about what we think. To me, it's about the priorities of the world. To me, it's about saving humanity and saving our future and so forth and preserving our future for humanity. And not so much about the ideological difference that you and I might have based on this information. So hopefully that helps. All right. Now, lastly, I want to try to answer a question that Mark asked me on the phone last night, which I thought was a wonderful question, and nobody's ever asked me this question. But he asked me, he said, how did he put it? Why do you think that there's such an interest in the Antichrist these days? I was like, yeah, that's an interesting question to try to answer. Now, I do think there's a couple reasons why. One is I think that the teacher coming back into the world is affecting each and every one of us, whether we are aware of it or not. And it's affecting those people who are Christian. They are responding to it in their way that they're responding to it, and it's affecting them. Now, it's affecting them differently than this is for affecting somebody like me and people who believe Maitreya is the awaited teacher and that kind of thing. But they're responding in a way that they think he's the Antichrist, or they think this person's the Antichrist, or Obama, and so forth. So I think it's just an unconscious response to the teacher coming back. And so I also would say that if you look at politics here in the United States, right, there's a huge thing going on with Trump. And then he has this huge following of people, they call them the MAGA, followers of, the MAGA folks, right? And they look to Donald Trump like a messiah. And if you don't believe me, just go and look through some of the videos on YouTube and listen to what some of these preachers and some of these people are talking about. They view him as a messiah, as a godlike figure. And it's surprising to me because from what I've known about Donald Trump, he is nothing near being a messiah figure. He's pretty corrupt, actually. He's pretty gross in a lot of ways. Very misogynistic, very vulgar, very narcissistic. I mean, I can think of a lot of different psych terms to apply to him, but messiah would not be one of them that I would use. But people are looking to him as that. Why are they doing that? I think they are also responding in their own way to the teacher coming back. And the more that Maitreya gets out in public, the more he starts to affect people. And it's creating this fervor of a messiah figure. I think the illusion is they're assigning to somebody like Donald Trump. And there's also, I think it's being, to swing back about the Lord as their materiality and their role in all this, and what's going on in the world today, I guess, not their role in this, but the role in the problems of the world and their role in that, I guess, is they are fanning that flame of that illusion that he is the Messiah. And so people will do anything that Donald Trump says, except for take a vaccine. Now, if you look 20 some odd years ago, right after 9/11, there was this tremendous illusion in the United States that the Bush administration was being inspired by God to attack Iraq and attack Afghanistan. If you spoke out against what they were doing as being a crime, well, then you were unchristian. Don't believe me? Think back and start talking to people who lived through that time, because that's exactly what happened. They didn't view Dick Cheney or George Bush as a messiah figure, but they thought he was being inspired by Christ to kill people, for oil, for cheaper oil. I mean, it's crazy. But it was a total illusion. And then you bring in the patriotism into that and so forth. And that's, I think, and even according to Benjamin Creme's master, was being fueled by the forces of darkness in that way. From what George W. Bush thought was God speaking to him was actually the forces of one of the masters of the forces of darkness speaking to him. And so, because if you look at just as a tree is known by its fruit, I mean, what's the fruit of what they did? It was nothing but destruction, more terrorism, death, bloodshed, I mean, political instability, financial ruin for not only this country, but for Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth. I mean, it's crazy. But they thought they were being inspired by God to do this. Just as the MAGA folks think that Donald Trump is God in a way. It's crazy. Crazy times we live in. But I think that we're responding, like I said, to swing back to it, I think the reason why this is such an interest, being the Antichrist, is they're responding to the teacher being back in their own way. The other people who are perhaps starting to march against what they consider to be an injustice, people who would never go out in the street and march for anything, are starting to do that. They're responding to the energies of Maitreya in the same way, in their own way. You look at Russia. We talked about it in a video not too long ago where I was pointing out the fact that millions upon millions of people were marching against the war in Ukraine, against a dictator that could put them in jail for the rest of their lives or take them out into a field and shoot them right in the head and feel nothing but, no sympathy toward them at all, right? Risk their lives in that way to speak out against that war. They are responding to the teacher in their own way. And so we're all responding to him in our own way. Even those people who are coming to this channel in their own way are responding to the teachings or the energy of Maitreya being here in the world today. So they might not see it like that. You might not realize that that's what's going on within you. You might be totally against what I have to say, but esoterically, if you look at it, that's what's going on. But anyway, I went a little long. I love everyone. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you so much for the comments, and I look forward to more in the future. You
Remember
guys
to
take
take
care and
action
enjoy the day.
and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.